Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my May 2020 horoscope report for you. I am over the moon excited to announce the launch of my new book, Planetology: How to Align with the Natural Rhythms of the Universe. And this is published through Watkins Media in the UK, and facilitating distribution worldwide is our partner, Penguin Random House. You can look up Annie Planetology in any search and you will find it for pre-order, and you can get more information about it. I'm very excited, and I hope it really helps you because that's the intention of my creating it. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction here, just about some general things to know, and then we'll get into some a lot of sign-specific things, really focused on Venus retrograde, where it's going to show up for your sign, and the special things to know about that, and also where this June 5th eclipse is going to show up in your chart. This is really critical because we are entering eclipse season very hot and heavy as of May. You might start to see eclipse manifestations even in April, 6 to 8 weeks before. The eclipses tend to get very hot, and we've got this grand finale of the Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycle. So lots of things involving home and work, and as we see now with what's going on with the coronavirus and all of the breakdown of things in the world that seem to be related to the coronavirus, but really all of this is astrological. A lot of topics of home and work and working from home and distance, everything about distance and distancing is coming up in a big way. So this eclipse cycle is going to bring a lot of information about how this is all going to go. Definitely stay tuned after this video. I will be putting at the end my video called The Astrology of 2020, and that's going to be my input on the coronavirus as it relates to the astrology, things that are going on with the systems in the world, and how I believe we can make the most of the opportunities that are coming and deal with the challenges that are also here. Okay, so definitely listen for that after this video. So there are 3 eclipses, one on June 5th, a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. Then we have on June 21st a solar eclipse at 0 degrees. And then we have on July 5th a lunar eclipse at 13 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so in the May report, I'm going to show you where this June eclipse is happening. In the June report, I'm going to talk about the locations of the 2nd June eclipse, where that is going to be for you. And in the July report, I'll talk about the location of the July eclipse. Okay, so between 3 horoscopes, we'll cover all of the energies, how that's going to look for you. Venus retrograde is very, very major right now because we are actually in it May 13th through June 25th. Venus, the ruler of love and relationships, money and finances, and beauty and self-esteem and design projects and artistic expression. Major rulership of the domains of Venus are coming up in a big way. And I have created lots of resources for you, including a Venus retrograde blog that you can find if you just search for Annie Botticelli Venus retrograde. You'll find all of these resources that I have. And in these May videos, I am going to show you in the chart where that is for you. I've had a lot of requests to go back to the format where I show you the charts and show you more specific detail for the early, middle, and late degree placements, what certain things look like. From the last eclipse cycle, I had some terrible endings that happened then that I had to work with, so I wasn't able to put the extra time in with doing the charts, but now in this month I'm bringing them back. So definitely please let me know if you want me to keep doing that, because I do listen to your feedback. I listen to nice feedback. If people are mean, I don't listen to them. So anything nicely worded, I definitely take into consideration. So we've got a really very important month here. 2020 is one of the most pivotal years of our time. And so May is another cog in the wheel of this time. So I'm going to go into a lot of those details of what that Venus retrograde specifically is going to look like. So let's go ahead and drill down to this sign specific. Oh wait, one more thing. I am creating a free course on claiming victory from viruses. Okay, this topic is very near and dear to my heart, which I will explain in detail in the actual course, why I know so much about this. Spirit has been prepping me to assist with viruses for a while, and there's just way too much information on this topic for me to bring out in the videos. So I'm going to create a whole class about this that I'll continue adding to, so you can register for that class at lumelife.com, L-U-M-E, life.com. Search for Luminous Life Multiversity in my name, and you can see there in the free course listings that you can enroll in the school and in the course for free, so that you can understand how to protect yourself from viruses, understand what they're doing. And I also will go into quite a bit of detail about the bigger picture of how viruses are part of our human evolution and how to work with them in the video called Astrology of 2020 that will follow this video. Okay, so now let's go into the sign-specific movement of Venus retrograde and what types of implications we can see from this, and that placement of the June 5th eclipse for you.
Hello, fellow Sagittarius friends. We've got a very busy month of May. Usually, May is full of travel and writing and expressing and interacting with friends for everybody, but especially SAGGIE'S, because we have our planet, our signs of Sagittarius in opposition to the Gemini placements. So I'm going to go into some more detail about this. We're going to especially focus on Venus retrograde and where it's going to be for you, and we'll touch on that first lunar eclipse in that triad of transformation, I'm calling them, that 3 eclipse cycle that is running from June through July, but we will definitely start feeling that in May, if not sooner. So to best use this information, you'll want to know where you are in the Sagittarius spectrum, and know that this reading is for Sag rising, Sag moon, Sag sun, or if you watch for other Sag placements. So early Sages are basically November born, or 0 to 9 degrees, middle around December 1st through 10th, or 10 to 19 degrees, and late around the 11th through the rest of the sign, and 20 to 29 degrees. And I'm in that late degree Sag placement with you all. I have my moon and my sun in late degree placements, which is how I came to understand that horoscope reports don't generally speak to the people at the end of the sign, because they're not using charts that look like what our charts look like. But don't worry, I have you covered. Okay, so let's use the early chart to talk about some things that are true for everybody. Okay, so just ignore that, and what I'm going to talk about will be true for all early, middle, and late degree placements. As we have planets moving through Gemini, and Mercury will be there this month of May, and the Sun will be there this month in May, they all make oppositions to our SAGGIE placements. So however many Sag placements you have, they're over here. Okay, I have 9 Sag placements in my chart, and quite a few of them are actual planets. So every Sag planet you have, every Gemini planet comes and goes bump, 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 bump. And what that creates is overstimulation. And you'll notice that this time every year, the planets start moving through Gemini, you're like, whoa, so busy, crazy busy. And you don't know which direction you're going. You're running around. A lot of times it tends to be very financially, lucrative. Bumps of money tend to come in this time. And also just busyness. So whether whatever the reasons that you're running around, it's usually very social, and you're just kind of in overtime more than usual. And because of that, we tend to get burnt out at this time of the year more than usual. And the Gemini energies rule the respiratory tract. So respiratory infections and things like that are we get more vulnerable to them. And of course, in the current climate of the viral pandemic, you have to be really, really careful, especially at this time when you see yourself doing your Sag spiral thing. We've talked about this before. All the signs move in a certain direction, and Sages are mutable, so they move in a spiral, and we move in an upward spiral. Okay, that's how we go. We're over here doing this. Now we're over here. Now, hey, we're over here. Now we're over here. But there's a method to our madness that people who know us well, and if they understand us, can see, and we understand it. But to somebody else, it just looks like we're, a cyclone. So when you have that energy and you combine it with the Gemini, it spins you out more. So you might notice you have a lot of Gemini friends. I know I do. And when we talk, we're like, blah, 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 and everybody gets excited and worked up. But you can, it's that kind of energy that can easily throw you off your center, right? Because you're going like this and you're over here and here. But finding your center is more crucial at this time with all of this Gemini energy. Okay, and so meditation, putting your bare feet in the ground, things like that, breathing, trying to say no to some things and not do too much. Be extra productive at the beginning of the month as those Taurus energies are more intact. That will be much easier for you to stay grounded and pull things through. a lot of times you'll find yourself traveling at this time of year. And I don't know what, the world situation will hold as far as travels, but there is a good chance for an increased, at least local travel, if not beyond, depending on what the circumstances are for you all at this time, especially as the month progresses. And traveling for money or traveling back to a place that felt like home or had ties to the past are also increased in odds. And definitely, I mentioned this before in the intro, but definitely go to lumelife.com, Lume life.com, because I'm going to have this free course on lumelife.com. That's my school, Luminous Life Multiversity, but I'm going to have a free course called Claiming Victory Over Viruses, and that is going to be very helpful, not just for coronavirus, but also the general tendencies when you tend to get yourself spun out and you get less resistant to, these types of things, that opportunistic, parasitic things that come in. This will help to equip you to understand these energies more and to keep yourself safe and healthy. And also at the end of this video, make sure you stay tuned. I'll have, the astrology of 2020, and I'll talk more about the energy of viruses and how we can understand how they're a part of our conscious human evolution. Okay. So let's get down into the nitty-gritty of this Venus retrograde thing. Okay, Venus retrograde is so important because Venus rules so many areas of life. It rules, let's get this out of the way for now. Get these out of the way. Okay, so Venus, covers a lot of domain. And I did talk about a lot of examples in the April report. You might want to check back on that because I'm not going to repeat everything. There's so much to tell. And you'll definitely want to check my Venus retrograde blog and my Venus retrograde video. And those links are also in the notes below this. So Venus rules love, beauty, put our lips there, beauty, and money, and self-esteem. Okay, and design projects and creative projects can also fall into there. So it covers a lot of ground, and it's retrograde for around 4 months. Because even though the actual retrograde is May 13th or thereabouts, depending on your time zone, through June 25th, there's a shadow period, lengthy one, that starts April 9th and runs at the end through around July 29th, 30th, depending on your time zone. I have to clarify, very important, something that somebody posted about, just in case anyone else is thinking this. The post said, Annie, I am not buying in to shadow periods of retrogrades. Okay, so it's very important to understand that this shadow periods are not Annie made. I did not make this shadow period up. This isn't something I decided upon. These are mathematical calculations that are predictable, and anyone that knows how to calculate them can find out those dates. They're mathematical. So no, it's not a matter of buying in or not. These are astrological truths, and the more you follow them, the more you see the validity to their effects. The effects get stronger as you get to the actual retrograde, and they wane as you get away from it, but they are there. Okay, so now we have that cleared up. So all in all, this is 4 months, and that's why we have to spend so much time talking about it. You can see my resources for some general, more general Venus retrograde things that you need to know, but just a couple of pieces about this is that the retrograde transits of this, Venus tend to bring up weak links or things that we worked on from the past that are blessings. So blessings and weak links in the areas that are ruled by Venus. Although it's very common and good to re-examine the major issues that come up with the love, the beauty, the money, the self-esteem, the financial stuff, actually making the life-changing decisions is not as well indicated. Give that a big red X. You do have to follow your own intuition because there are certain things that could go on in your chart, in your life, that could supersede the general recommendations. Okay, so I give you this detailed information to help you understand the energy behind it so that you can most match that with what's going on in your life and make your best decisions. But the reason why big life-changing decisions are not usually indicated during this time is because you get these goggles on, these crazy goggles. These are the googly Venus retrograde goggles, okay? And what happens is that everything is a little bit warped through these glasses that we put on in Venus retrograde. And at the end of the Venus retrograde transit, okay, here you're like, yay, and everything's all yay. And at the end of it, then what was I thinking is what happens. Okay, so this turns into this, like, what was I thinking? This is a typical thing with Venus in retrograde when we get a ton of new wardrobe stuff or do design projects or, certain relationship things or money things. What was I thinking? Okay, so you want to avoid that because you might not be seeing clearly. So I always advise to feel into assessing, researching, experimenting, trying things on, or doing low stakes things that have no long-term consequence. Those are all great during the retrograde. But for the bigger things, you might want to feel into them. Okay, so let's look at what's happening where you're having this retrograde. So everybody's going to have Venus retrograde in Gemini because that's the sign that it's in. It's going from 21 degrees back to 5 degrees. So just staying in one sign. So things involving money and having to do with spending money or making money through devices or vehicles and phones and things like that have a tendency to come up. If you can afford something, don't worry about it. Okay? If you got to get it, then don't worry about it. If you can plan your timing, you may have a smoking deal. But what tends to happen, I've seen this happen, and I actually wound up getting a car, and this was in the flow of the universe, and it was perfect, and I'm glad that I did. But I got this beautiful vehicle. I love it. Still love it. I got it just at the tail end of the Venus retrograde energies. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to manifest, because it usually tends to. And so what happened is there was some cosmetic damage that got to the car fairly soon after I got it. Now, again, Venus rules aesthetics. The car works fine. The money part wasn't an issue, but the aesthetics got hit from the Venus retrograde. So there always tends to be some kind of manifestation. So it's not the end of the world, but, you'll see the more you look as to how this manifests. So just look at the blog and look at the Venus retrograde blog and then the blog series for Gemini and then all of these resources I have for you to look about the details of this. Okay, we're not talking about this right now. What I want to show you is what field of experience this is occurring. So for early degree friends, 21 back to 5 degrees is pretty much going to be pretty purely in the 7th house. Now, the later you are in the early spectrum, okay, so every day is a degree. That's why there's 30 days in each of the signs. It's broken into 10. The early is the first 10, the middle is the middle 10, and the late is the last 10. So it's basically the first 10 days of the sign. Then is early, second 10 days is the middle, and last 10 days is the late. If you know your degrees because you're watching for your sun or moon sign, which this is just as valid for you all, then every day or degree you get towards the latter part of the early spectrum, you will start to shade into these 6th house possibilities, okay? And we'll talk about what they are at length, but I want to establish the groundwork of what's going to be where for who. All right. Whoopsie, gotta get that out of there. Okay. Middle degree friends, you can see, oh wait, that's a late degree friend. There we go. Middle degree friends, 21 degrees back to 5, it's going to be in both. 6th and 7th. Okay? And then late degree friends, I'm in there with you. It's going to be pretty purely in the 6th house. But this is always an interesting thing, and this does tend to happen. Even though we're not experiencing the bulk of this in, or even barely any at all in the 7th house, since Venus rules the 7th house, everyone in the cosmos, or on the earth, are experiencing the energies of Venus retrograde in the 7th house because Venus rules relationships and that's a relationship house, okay? So late friends, you are secondhand sort of experiencing it there. And things with relationships will come up for better and worse. But just purely looking at the Venus retrograde transit, it's going to be in your 6th house. So now I'm going to give you lots of detail about what Venus retrograde in the 6th and 7th house looks at. And now you know that pretty much every Sag is going to have 7th house energies because of Venus's rulership of the 7th house. And so we'll put early, middle, and late equals 7th house energies. Okay. And then the middle and late plus a good bit of the early are going to have 6th house energies as part of this transit. And then we can talk about what that means. So let's talk about the 7th house first. For those of you who also have this moving directly through the 7th house, it's going to add more oomph and emphasis on the relationship sectors because of the combination of the sign and house movement. So questioning, addressing issues in and restoring magic of relationships is one of the number one ways energies manifest during this transit through the 7th house. Sometimes love returns during Venus retrograde. If you've been separated from your love, or there was a breakup, or the magic had gone away, sometimes that returns. And purposely focusing on spending time with your honey during this time, like if you've been busy with work or with kids, purposely focusing time, you can have that love and that happiness, have a little renaissance. And if you've been separated from your love, sometimes they return. I remember one time during Venus retrograde, my husband, who is from Alaska, was called off for family business there, and I didn't see him for a good bit of the Venus retrograde, and I was sad, but I understood what was going on. And then when Venus was getting back, he was back, and I was happy. So that's one way that manifests. Another way it tends to manifest is that it can bring up old issues, okay, where things that you don't like come up. Now, while this can be bad and annoying in the way that it can be stressful and you can say, gosh, this old thing again, why is this coming up, blah, blah, blah. I see it as a positive thing because when we have something under the rug, this is our little rug, we sweep things under because we don't want to deal with them, especially Sagittarius, because we're too busy being happy and positive to worry about it. So we're like, nah, never mind, I'll deal with it later, I don't care, it's not a big deal. Then when the rug comes up, all the stuff that was under the rug, like that, comes flying in the air. And some of it's good stuff, like stuff we forgot about, and some of it's not good stuff. It's plucky. We don't like it. But either way, we have to deal with it. And the more we actually deal with it, instead of avoiding it, like through inner work, through couples counseling, through, whatever, and I'll make some suggestions, the more it can permanently turn into a happy thing, and that when Venus retrograde comes back again, it doesn't have to keep coming back if you use the energies to solve it. There are some people that will break up during Venus retrograde, and that will be permanent. There are some people that will break up during Venus retrograde, and it won't be permanent. A lot of things we do during Venus retrograde, we tend to either regret or reconsider. And so that's why I usually recommend you really have to tune this to your own situation. But in general, unless you are in an unsafe situation or your intuition tells you otherwise or some other very important reason, it's usually indicated to not choose to leave a relationship in the Venus retrograde because it does tend to have kind of like this shadow of doubt that afterward, or regret or something like that. So, and I have guided many people around this where they're like, oh, I've had it, I'm leaving, I'm done with this. And maybe making like a temporary agreement like, hey, let's take a break, a month off or something, or a couple months, just to kind of like be in our own space. A temporary arrangement that's not intended to be permanent. Sometimes that could work out, but I just recommend that you work on it. Like if the person in the relationship really has value to you, use it to say, I'm going to put everything I have into it. This way, if it doesn't work out, you can look back. And if you decide to separate and the energies are more clear, then you know you did everything. You don't have it hanging over your head for the rest of your life, that you don't feel like you did enough. Okay, so doubt is cast on relationships at this time. So a lot of times love will come back from the past, as in like a past relationship, and bring it into the present to dance with again, to reconsider. And sometimes that person or situation skips out just as fast when the retrograde is done. Like they come in, they come out. You get to learn the lessons, or you get to have closure, and they leave again. Or sometimes they come in and they stay. So there's a lot of different things. But just remember the idea of trying things on, avoiding moving in together permanently, or big things sometimes can assist in the process. That's why I tell you this stuff early, because a beautiful window to move in with somebody is this end of March, beginning of April time. It has a lot of movement, it has a lot of oomph, it has a lot of gusto. If you meet somebody new during this time, and I have a lot of specifics about this in the other resources, so I'm definitely missing things in this video because I've done such a good job in these other resources, I don't want to belabor all of it. But if you meet somebody new shiny relationship at this time, a lot of times it tends to follow a shorter term than expected. There's an 18-month storyline. So a lot of times within that 18 months, either it ends or it changes in a big way. But again, don't let this dissuade you. If you meet someone you really think is the love of your life, don't discount them. Just try to not get married in the month that you meet them, because you're not seeing clearly. And if it really is true and lasting, then after the retrograde, then you can see what changes happen. But just take it slow, Take it slow, but don't ignore any hunches and don't ignore any possibilities. People who are trying to date, going back to resources or sites, or, like let's say your friend's been saying forever, I got to set you up with this person. Like that would be a person from the past, and that may have, if it's someone you know from the past, or even if you know them and you never dated them and you weren't a romantic interest, sometimes seeing someone in Venus retrograde can cause a romantic relationship to begin, but you knew them already. And sometimes that, can work out pretty well. So some questions to proactively ask, or that may naturally come up during the Venus retrograde through the 7th house, or, this really for everybody, like I said, because of the rulership, is in what ways do you perceive your current relationship as helping you on your path? And this is any relationship. It's not just romantic. Is this relationship serving to hinder you on your highest path? Okay, so is it helping or hindering? Asking these questions, but not necessarily making decisions from them. You see the difference? Are your perceptions correct, or are you projecting your internal issues on the relationship? Okay, so we live in a holographic reality, and sometimes we best learn about ourselves through projecting out into our experience, and sometimes that means we project out onto the other person. And if we're projecting nice things, then that person is, yay, we like them. And if we're projecting out our pain and betrayal and all of that, then sometimes that person looks like, the bad guy, or they get mad. And so, really trying to see how much of our relationship situation is something we brought to the situation. How can you shift out of negative patterns within your relationship? These are good questions to ask and good things to work on. There are, like I always say, there are things that aren't the best to try to do. There's not a lot of momentum sometimes with certain things when Venus is in retrograde, but that's good, because instead of doing those things that you would be doing for that need that momentum, you can be focusing on, it's like the earthworm, okay? Ted Andrews always talks about the earthworm. And the earthworm is a little creature that goes back and forth over old ground. It just works soil through its body, goes in that way, comes out that way, and it just keeps working that soil over and over again. And as that happens, it gets finer and finer and finer, and really great for a fruitful harvest if you're using that. Earthworms in your garden are amazing. And so the retrograde is like the earthworm, where you just keep working back over old ground and to make this nice fine soil for beautiful crops in the future. asking the question how you can create win-win relationships. How can you be better heard in relationship? How can you hear, better, others hear you? Things like that. What context from your past might be helpful to your future visions? What people from your past are you drawn to connect with now? Things like that. So, any kind of inner work is very well indicated at this time. And couples counseling. Also bringing past work ideas, to edit or redo or revamp. Okay, so something else that goes on, right, is this sixth house thing we talked about. So all of the middle and late degree placements, this is going to be relevant for you, and a good bit of those early placements, unless you're right there at the first couple of degrees, maybe you're not going to feel this. But at least part of the retrograde is going to start shading in the later you get into that division of the early placements. So the sixth house rules pets, health, medicine and medical diagnostics and procedures, treatments, daily work environment, self-employment, how you go about getting things done, your organization, your routine, your diet, your supplements, things like that. So a lot of times things involving health, either you having to spend money on it or, debt that you had, or things like that you may have available to you. I always tell people when you have Venus retrograde in the sixth house, look to see what insurance and complementary insurance benefits you have. Or like things, I like to use the example of the United Breast Foundation. They, I like to get the happy boobies out for this one. Okay. They can sometimes give grants for thermography. Thermography is a really great tool that can be used with the mammography and other mainstream things that can often detect hotspots or problems before they happen. So, and you can get grants from the United Breast Foundation. And so things like that, places like for your health where you could get money or assistance, insurance benefits, going back to your insurance company saying, hey, you should cover this, and then, maybe health or medical things that a spouse may have left you or has or something like that. So anything involving money and health and the past and, prevention and things like that are a good way to spend this time, and they might just come up naturally. Your pet might need some attention, or you might need to just spend some money on that. Making money involving pets. I remember one time I started a pet sitting business during a Venus retrograde that was going through my sixth house, and I knew it would be short term, but I wanted it to be short term. So we always talk about if something's going to be short term, then don't worry about it. If if it doesn't need a ton of zest or gusto, it's fine to work with during the retrogrades. Money or raises or acknowledgement owed to you could come to your work at this time. Love in the workplace from the past, or, like if you go to yoga or in your neighborhood, something in your daily experience, love or romance, or you and your partner could go back to doing some things on a daily basis or getting into different, practices that you used to have or patterns or things that you used to do well together with. Questions to ask or that might just naturally come up. Do you love your job? If not, what can you do to have better work experience in the future? Working on plan B in the backdrop without making a final decision is a good use of the energy. How can you leverage past accomplishments to boost your current or future work life? Do you have nagging symptoms? What do you have health resources available to you that you can investigate? We talked about that. Do you need to go back to, a health regimen or something that worked for you in the past? Something involving your pet or working with pets? Something involving business, having money owed to you or business ideas you had before? Okay, so now we have to talk about eclipses. And the SADGE video is going to be a little bit longer this month because of this. Because eclipses in our sign are starting. This is a big deal. So, we've got these eclipses will take place over around a year and a half. Actually, let me just get this back here. All right, so starting June 5th with that lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sag, and we're going to drill down a little bit with this. And then going to December 3rd, 2021, is the time frame of the eclipse cycle. So it's around a year and a half, but because the few months before June it's brewing, and because, you know, months after this it's integrating, it still is like a 2-year cycle. So just expect massive radical change during this time, that your life now will probably look very different after these next couple of years because of the eclipses working in your sign. So to understand more, okay, I used to go into lots of detail in each horoscope that had anything to do with the eclipse season, the kinds of things you might see. But I'm doing something different now, which is I've got a whole 12 sign eclipse series through the eclipses through the houses and signs up on my main page, Annie Helps You TV, or you can just search for Annie Botticelli YouTube. It's the channel you're on now. Annie Helps You TV.com. Okay, so if you look on my homepage or just search for the eclipses, you'll want to study eclipse in Sagittarius or ninth house. That's what it's called, because ninth house eclipses and Sagittarius eclipses have the same types of results, okay? So you want to look to see, it's basically going to make changes with writing and teaching and learning. Of course, distance learning is going to be a huge piece of our future, and these eclipses are going to bring that out. I'll talk more about that in the Astrology of 2020 video. But you'll definitely want to watch that. So now let's look at the houses that are going to be affected so that you can also check that out. So let's bring the early degree friends. So this is going to be at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, okay? So the first thing to know about that is that anyone between 10 and 20 degrees, the closer to 15 degrees you are, the more powerful this eclipse is going to be for you, because it will hit your placement. Now, the more placements you have in Sag, if any of them are between 10 and 20 degrees, especially closer to 15, the more powerful, then the eclipse will hit right on that planet. Okay, so in general, we're talking about, so that's like for the birthdays, the December 1st through 10th, around there. And the closer you are to like the 5th, 6th, you know, kind of in the center there, 7th, then, you know, you'll get the most intensity. And intensity can be better or worse, and both. You know, some very life-changing things are afoot for Sagittariuses. All right, so now we can look to see the house. So where is 15 degrees for early degree placements? That's going to be in your first house. All right, so we'll put early first house. Then middle degree placements, that could be right anywhere in the 12th or first house. And then late degree placements, you're actually going to have that in the 12th house. Okay, so here's our little handy grid. Early, first house, middle, 12th or first. It could be and. Could feel it in both places. And the late in the 12th house. So the types of things that this may bring is what I want you to go to see in the other video series, because it's so complex. You know how much detail I go into, so I have to know when to draw the line here. For this particular video, we've got to call it quits. But when you search for the Annie Helps You TV, you're going to watch the one for Sag and the ninth house, because that's going to do the sign. Then you'll find your division, and and then you'll look at these. So the 12th house ones for middle and late degree, that's going to be 12th or Pisces. It's called Eclipse in 12th house or Pisces. And then for the early and the middle, Eclipse in Aries or first house is what that one's called. Okay, because they're synonymous. The house rulership and the sign rulership, they match. And then you'll see, what I've seen over many, many, many years, 2 decades of looking at this, what tends to happen during those eclipses in those areas. Okay, so I had said it earlier, but just in case after all this information there's any confusion here, this eclipse is on June 5th, but we often feel this 4 to 6 weeks and sometimes more. So the hot spot, there's eclipse cycles every 6 months. There's a hot spot, and so anything can happen in between during the whole eclipse cycle, but things tend to, like a pot of water being boiled, things tend to come to a boil as you get closer. So 4 to 6 weeks before and after this are hot spots for it. So May is prime time for news. You might also start seeing things in April, and sensitive people will notice the storylines that are at play even before. And this is true. So months before this happens, you'll see it leading in. And every part of the cycle of the whole, year and a half time is another chapter in this storyline that's occurring. We've got another eclipse in June that I'm going to talk about, June 21st, and then we've got another eclipse in July, July 5th. So I'm going to talk about the June 21st eclipse in the June report and show you where that's going to be for you. And then I'm going to talk about the July eclipse in the July report, and of course I'll have those each out a month early, so you'll have plenty of time to know what you're working with there for the triad of transformation of the 3 eclipses.
Okay, so definitely look in the notes below this video. If you click the little arrow that says more underneath the video, it will reveal written notes. In those notes, I have the links to my Venus Retrograde video. I have the links to the blogs for Venus Retrograde through the signs and houses. And I also have the link to loomlife.com, which is where you can register for that free class on claiming victory from viruses. And you can also see my other resources, including my course, Becoming a Professional Astrologer. Astrology is always important, but in these times of what the types of things that are going on now, understanding astrology in a different way can be very, very helpful to our own individual peace and process, and for helping others. So if you want to learn to do that, you can check that out at loomlife.com as well, LUME-life.com. And you can see more blogs at anniehelpsyou.com. I have lots and lots of blogs, and at cozybysweetstarlight.com. You can, again, this link will be in the notes underneath as well. You can find written horoscopes by me and astrology kissed blogs, how to use astrology in your day-to-day in wonderful ways. Most of the resources that I create for you are free, so make sure that you tap into those. I only have a very small amount of paid services compared to my free resources, and those are for people who want to go deeper into my teachings and my work. But otherwise, just know that there's so much for you. Just explore the websites that I'm sending you to. So I hope you have a wonderful month. I hope that you can stay positive and make the most of the opportunities that are coming to us through these transits, the big ones and the small ones. Venus retrograde is actually a big one, but it's kind of dwarfed in some ways underneath the titans of the zodiac clashing in these Capricorn placements. But it still is going to have Venus retrograde, even though it's on this different level than these big guys. It's really going to have a lot of effect on your day-to-day experience during this month and beyond. So I do hope you have the best month possible, and I'll see you soon. Bye.